there are two starting points of the show. One is my experience of teaching undergraduate students about Simone de Beauvoir and thinking about discussing with these 20-year-olds how they react and how they think about their positions as women in the world and how they think about feminism in a kind of post-Me Too context. And the other departure point was hearing Ursula Hauser speak in a video about her love of older women artists and how she collected these women artists like Meret Oppenheim and Louise Bourgeois. And suddenly there was a kind of connection for me between these things, and so I proposed the topic to the gallery, who gave me a carte blanche to do this show. And so then my idea was to bring together works from artists from different generations who represent also an affinity with different forms of feminism from the 40s to today, and see how these works, which were not necessarily about explicitly feminist artists in any way, but were speaking back to ideas in Simone de Beauvoir's book. And the idea was not that, I didn't check if all these artists had read Simone de Beauvoir, but it's this idea that her ideas in fact trickle through other books, through other contexts, so that to what it is to be a woman and how being a woman is something that is constructed, how we are taught from puberty to adopt certain behaviors, or how we are pushed into certain areas of life, is something that everyone has experience with. And so it was in a very fluid way to see how this thought, this thinking, 70 years after the publication of the book Deuxième Sexe, how those ideas could be played out through a collection and a selection of works of art. It's a mix of artists who are no longer with us, historical figures, and artists who are very much alive, and who all, apart from one young Swiss artist called Annaïk Lou Pitteloud, who is represented by a gallery also in the Leuvenbrouw, all the other artists work with the gallery, and the estates work with the gallery. So, when an artist is active, there's a lot of exhibitions, there's works available from the studio, and so it was a bit a kind of, I would send out my list of this is what I would like for the show, and they would respond by saying you can have this, but this you can't because it's already being shown in another exhibition. For example, at the moment there's a big Louise Bourgeois show in Basel, there's another one in London, so it was not possible to get all the works I wanted, but then the gallery or the foundation said, actually, we have this work available, would you be interested? So it was a bit this kind of give and take with studios and artists and foundations. If I wanted to pick one work or summarize one work, there's a work that I particularly like, which is actually just there, which is just a bunch of, there's two works maybe. One is a bunch of keys on a stand, and it's from the Swiss artist Annaïk Lou Pitteloud, which represents, it's called All the Places I Have No Longer Access To, and it shows a bunch of keys, which are all keys that belongs to places that she has lived in or that she has had as studios and that she has no longer access to. So for me, it's very much about opening new doors at different stages of your life and then leaving things behind. And it's about this freedom of going to places and growing also as an individual. And of course, if you're a woman and you have the key, you are de facto an independent woman. And that's for me is a strong image. And maybe a second work that I have, for me, is an emblem of the show, is a 1978 film by Geta Brătescu called In the Studio, which shows in 20 minutes in a silent black and white film the artist doing all sorts of silly things and sleeping in the studio space. And again, it's a kind of claim of absolute freedom of an artist leading her life and being creative, and it's completely the opposite of what Simone de Beauvoir described as the woman at work doing useful things like making dinner, taking care of the kids, and all these kind of things. So it's an opposite idea which I thought was very strong. One thing that for me was interesting and actually very moving is that when I had installed the whole exhibition, I realized how much, for me, the show was a self-portrait of myself, because it's artists that I have grown with or that I have a dialogue with, and that I realized that how much art is something that is very intimately connected to our construction of self, and that to be a woman and to be a feminist is not just a kind of theoretical position, but it's also something that connects to intimacy and an intimate identity. And I think I realized this even more when I made this show and stood in the middle of these works that have accompanied me for many years.